So Luke, tell me a little bit about this Blair Witch prequel script
Well,
that surfaced.
with these franchises, there's always that kind of appetite to expand them and to kind of continue that lore. It did come out in an interview, or maybe it was a podcast, I believe, with one of the co-directors there. That they had been working on a script. I think they said about 10 years ago. There was one out
About
there.
a decade ago, it
Yeah,
says.
and the idea being that they wanted to dive more into the lore of the Blair Witch. Now, this was going to be more so a period piece, is what was pitched. Kind of, they said it was going to lean heavy on Native Americans and that kind of lore as well. Um, Chronicling, that the Blair Witch has been around for a very long time, and it kind of connecting some dots in terms of some of the visuals that we had seen with the doll or the stick figures and things like that, and kind of understanding where that was coming from. Apparently, that this was pitched to Lionsgate at that point, at the point of the completion of the script, and they did like it, but it was just way too expensive for their taste to. Since it was going to be that period piece to actually, put into production. And then also after that, there was an intention to do a sequel, either 6 to 10 years after that first film. So, I think the intention there is to continue the expansion of the Blair Witch. I think there is something which I didn't know, may have escaped me. I don't know if you were aware that there is another Blair Witch property in production right now. They're
Yes,
saying.
I believe we did a story on it earlier this year or late last year.
Oh, did we? Okay.
Yeah, we covered it on the show.
Well, you know me. So I don't know. For me, it's one of those things where an over explanation. Yes, I love lore, but I don't know necessarily if you have to get granular with everything in the lore. And maybe some things are just left unexplained. So, I mean, I'd be intrigued to take a look at that script and see what it entailed. I do like that it was going to be very different. It sounded like it was going to be very different than the original Blair Witch because as we talked about with our issues with The Nun too, where it feels very much like a Conjuring movie. So it's kind of intriguing to step outside that box and make a prequel to a found footage film that would be more cinematic. So I don't know. I want to see if as we're getting Halloween, we're getting The Exorcist. If the Blair Witch is going to be something that we're going to be seeing here in the next few years in terms of prequels, sequels, and who else knows what we could get from it.
Yeah, no, I would definitely be interested in more Blair Witch. I gotta admit that last one didn't really work for me all that well.
Yeah.
And it sucks because I do like the director, Adam Wingard. I thought that he has some solid picks, but he also has some that just don't work. And I just think that maybe there was a lot riding on that. I loved the marketing campaign behind it of it being a movie called The Woods. For so long till like a couple months before it comes out. They were like, oh, nope, this is a Blair Witch movie in hiding. Very in line with the way that Blair Witch kind of handled itself when it first came out, being that kind of like, oh, is it real? Is it not? Kind of stuff. I liked it a lot. But the movie for me didn't really do anything for me. Again, from what I understand, you guys have played the video game a little bit, right? You and your wife?
We owned it.
Okay, I think she said she played it.
Okay, she may
Um,
have.
but yeah, I from what I understand, the game is really well done, and yeah, I think that you got to find that right angle. You got to find the best way to tap back into this story, and really, I think for me personally, I don't know if expanding on the lore and getting too, like you said, granular with the backstory is the way to go. I would just really like to see them maybe just continue with almost like I recently watched Lake Mungo, and I'd really like to see something like that where they kind of get a little deeper into almost the missing person aspect of this a little more, and not just so like, oh, we're out here looking for the witch. We're out here. I want to see more like interviews with family members of people who went out there, and maybe they find more footage. Maybe they find more things, more letters, just really get into that, make it a whole blown documentary about just the concept of the Blair Witch.
Yeah, I think that could be interesting, kind of bringing even more lore to what's established without really overly explaining anything. I think could be more interesting than, trying to um, dissect everything that has been brought from that original film. Because I think the special thing about that film, it was the aura and the mystique that was brought to initially thinking it was real and then watching these events unfold as that found footage aspect of it. So I don't think we need to, go back and put this thing under a microscope and say every little thing that was done in that original film, now we have to find some sort of way to explain it in a prequel, because I think then that becomes it on rewatches of the original Blair Witch. I think it'll make it less fun, where it's
Mhm.
like, oh well, now we have to connect all these dots. So I would be intrigued to see what they can do in an expansion of the Blair Witch, but I don't know necessarily if that prequel's the way to go right now.